And just yesterday, one of our teachers shared a story. He said, I was in my house in the evening and somebody knocked on my doors. And that was his student with her father. Her father is now serving in the army. And her father brought our teacher lots of, potatoes, carrots, other vegetables, just to thank him for supporting his child while the father was so far away. And just like this one case, just demonstrates how important this connection and this support is for, like on the individual and also on a group level, right? So I think, for us, being there for our students is the most important job that we can do right now. It's like number one priority. Be there, listen to them, support them, and just so that they know that there is always somebody who cares for them and who is there ready to help and listen to them. So that's always a hard question to answer. Because in the last 7 months, my life and the life of my organization and the life of 40 million people in Ukraine have dramatically changed because of the large-scale war. I was in Kiev in my home on that morning, and I do remember very well that my sister called me at 5:30 in the morning. She said, I hear explosions, and I didn't believe her. But then I heard the air raid siren myself for the first time in my life. And since that day, since 24th February, I have been hearing air raid sirens every single day. All of our teachers were in different communities in 4 parts of Ukraine at that time. And it was extremely challenging to get them together to make sure that everyone is in safety while, there was so much unpredictability and so many just like unknown circumstances that it was very hard to know what's going to happen the next day. But we found a huge relief in our mission to stay and continue providing learning and teaching to children in Ukraine, because many of them, I would say most of the children in Ukraine, are still staying at home, and they require our support on the ground much more than children who have left already Ukraine, because they are still staying there. They are leaving every single day under the extreme circumstances when their learning and their education is disrupted by the most devastating event in their lives. But we're positive. We're very much looking forward, to the victory, to the future, because we believe in in the bright future of Ukraine and in our victory. So in the last 7 months, most of the children in Ukraine have been receiving education online. A lot of them were, spending months or weeks and months in the bomb shelter. A lot of our students of Teach for Ukraine, especially in the Kyiv region, some of them spent months in the basement without being able, to get outside because there was constant shelling, there was bombing, and this reality is still, there for many children, especially those who are living close to the front lines, right? And only 30% of schools in Ukraine were able to open for in-person learning. So you can imagine that still the majority of children of Ukraine are receiving their education online. They're not able to go to schools because schools are not safe spaces anymore, right? Schools are being targeted, schools are being destroyed, schools are being damaged. We have more than 2,500 education institutions destroyed or damaged, which will have severe and long-term consequences on Ukraine's education system. And if there is no effective and safe learning in the country, right, a lot of families are deciding to leave Ukraine. So for us, a number one priority is first to win the war, and second, make sure that we have enough opportunities and enough circumstances and reasons for people to come back home and rebuild the country. So before the war, we were addressing the problem of education inequity, which has a very specific number in Ukraine. So almost 1/3 of Ukrainian school children, which is 1.2 million, it's the population of Estonia. They live and study in rural areas. And on average, they were 2.5 years behind their peers from big cities. And what we were trying to do, we were trying to match these children in rural areas with the best teachers possible. We were recruiting the best graduates. We were placing them in communities. They were teaching English, math, computer science, and they were acting as real role models for children, helping them to believe in their potential and helping them to unlock it. We were just in the middle of recruiting the new cohort of teachers in February when the large-scale war started, and the number one question for us was like, so what do we do now, right? But we realized that what children needed at that time was, mental health and psychosocial support. When children were adjourning our classes, they were asking questions like, why do I need to study when there is war? What's the point, like in education, if there is war? So we had to work with them and, bring them back to the school routine again, help them understand why it is so important to continue studying despite the war, especially in the war. So we had to prioritize their mental health and psychosocial support. We had to train our teachers in trauma-sensitive approach to teaching, because now we have students in classrooms who have been through extreme trauma, who have seen their parents abducted or their family members taken away from them, or children whose parents are fighting at the front line, defending the country. And all of them are experiencing huge trauma. So you need to be able, you need to be equipped with instruments and strategies how to deal with that as well. We also started providing emergency education services to children whose access to education was not existing at all because of the war. Many regions came under the occupation, and many children became displaced, right? They left their houses, they left their homes without anything, and they appeared to be in a very new places where there was nobody to support them. So we created safe learning spaces for children to be able to come and spend some time together, feel as children again. I would say millions of children in Ukraine have had to become adults when the war came, because a lot of them, took care of their siblings. A lot of them took care of their families, and we need to be there for them and support them, in the hardest moment of their life. Same about teachers, right? A lot of teachers have spent some time under occupation, right? They also been through a huge trauma themselves. Imagine yourself if you're detained, right? Or you have spent like months or weeks in the basement, right? Without being able to have proper access to, your colleagues, the school. I remember one case from our work back in April when we conducted a project on free tutoring classes for children who have been displaced. One of them sent us a message saying how grateful that child was that we brought them back a sense of normalcy in their life. And I cannot stress enough how important education is, especially during the war, because this generation will be rebuilding Ukraine when the war ends, right? We will need the young generations, we will need our children to work on making Ukraine a prosperous country, a democratic country, the country that we are fighting for. And it brings me so much comfort when our children are sending us messages saying that I want to study because I want to get to the university, because I want to get a job, because I want to pay taxes, because I want to support charities that I care about, right? And it gives us a lot of hope, and it gives us a lot of pride, like a feeling of being proud that we're still able to bring a lot of positive impact for children in our country in one of the most hardest times in our lives. So currently we have 30 full-time teachers who work in the 4 regions of Ukraine. So we are present in the north, in the south, in the east, and in the west of Ukraine. So currently we have 18 partner schools, and we work with almost 10,000 children. The biggest challenge was, in order to operate offline, the school needs to have a basement, not a basement, a bomb shelter that would be that would have enough space for children and teachers to hide if there is an air raid siren. Because, for example, in Kyiv, on average, you can have 3 air raid sirens per day. Every single time you need to go into bomb shelter, right? You cannot ignore that. So if a school doesn't have a proper bomb shelter, then we need to work online, supporting the teachers and supporting children on distance, right? And this is what our teachers and the organization is trying to work on. We don't have currently. We gave up our office, for example, because all of the team at Teach for Ukraine is dispersed in different regions. Most of our team members are located in the western part of Ukraine, which is considered to be safer. So we're working online, but every week we have offline visits to our schools. We work with our school principals, building the school of the network to be able to create these support groups, both for teachers and for principals, because by the end of the day, what matters is the human connection, right? When you have somebody next to you who's there for you to listen, to support, or just to be there to answer your text. And teachers and educators need that as well. At Teach for Ukraine, we've always thought that communication is probably 90% of success when you teach the children, right? It's about building the trust. It's about making sure that children trust you, they feel comfortable next to you, right? So when the large-scale war started, March, April, May, and half of the June, it was mostly about supporting children. Not giving them knowledge first and foremost, but giving them, psychological support. Just listening to, what they care about, what they're concerned about. So we had different groups. Suddenly, we had different groups of students whose needs were very different from each other, right? We had students who were still, in relatively safe space with their families, and those students who were separated, right? Because their parents, for example, have been drafted to serve in the army, right? And just yesterday, one of our teachers shared a story. He said, I was in my house in the evening and somebody knocked on my doors. And that was his student with her father. Her father is now serving in the army. And her father brought our teacher lots of, potatoes, carrots, other vegetables, just to thank him for supporting his child while the father was so far away. And just like this one case, just demonstrates how important this connection and the support is for like on individual and also on a group level, right? So I think for us, being there for our students is the most important job that we can do right now. It's like #1 priority. Be there, listen to them, support them, and just so that they know that there is always somebody who cares for them and who is there ready to help and listen to them. So Teach for Ukraine does not work in big cities, right? We work only in small communities because this is where the biggest need is, right? 2 of our partner communities, they were occupied during the whole months of March, and 2 of our schools there are damaged and almost destroyed, so it's not possible to have any classes there. And it's very heartbreaking to see that because the heart of the community is always a school, because it's about children, it's about the youth, right? So when your heart is hurt or is damaged, right, then your whole body feels that, right? The same about the community. So, but it's very inspiring to see that people who have been through the occupation, they've, gone back home, they started rebuilding the school. The first thing that people do is rebuilding the school, because they know that the school is the single most important institution in the whole community. Because if there is no school, there are no children. There is no reason for families to go back, right? Inequality always grows with the crisis, especially with the war, where every single child has been impacted by the large-scale war. Every single child has suffered, the most devastating event in their life. So just imagine, some of the children have been out of the school for 6 months because of the war, right? They were not able to get any schooling. They were not able to get any support. So imagine how far away they will be now with the war. We have children, many children in Ukraine have lost their limbs, They've gone through a huge physical trauma, and, they will be so much behind. So we will need the new, challenge to deal with. We will need to come up with the new system, support, with the new, school designs for children who have suffered physical, trauma during the war. And of course, we're seeing that the war has had and is having a huge economic damage in the country. Lots of people have lost and have been losing jobs. It means that more families will become less wealthy. They will not be able to afford extra help to children. They will not be able maybe to afford proper nutrition for their children. So imagine, it's just, the question is how many children like that Ukraine will see. There are news reports in Ukraine that dozens of civilians have died because of the Russian missile attack, while they're standing on the bus station, while they're standing in the line, to the supermarket. And these are someone's parents, these are someone's families. I remember a month ago, I visited a village that is located just 15 kilometers from the border with Belarus. The Russian missile hit the yard where the school was located. And 5 people were standing outside, just taking some fresh air from the bomb shelter. They were immediately killed, and 3 children became orphans in the very same second. So it's not even the question about inequality. It's about the question of how many more children will still suffer from this unjust and unprovoked war. But just to finish on the positive note, I do believe that every crisis and the event like war also offers some opportunities for us to reimagine our education system, for us to reimagine how we approach, supporting those who are most, lagging behind, and also how do we create new opportunities for people to still support their lives, support their education, when they've been through the war. So I think that, by the end of the day, Ukrainian people, Ukrainian children, students, educators, parents will become stronger eventually. But it's going to take some time, and Ukraine will need a lot of help from outside to deal with the consequences of the war. Officially, there are now 500,000 school children who are getting education in the EU, right? It's 500,000 of our children. They could be considered lost generation. Those who are still staying could be considered a lost generation. So first thing that we need to do is to end the war. The second thing that we need to do is to create opportunities and make sure that our children, our parents and families who are staying outside of Ukraine, they know that Ukraine is waiting for them. They know that Ukraine needs them, and know that Ukraine, will be able to offer them the comfort of coming back working on rebuilding the country, not rebuilding the education, but creating, creating new reality for people in Ukraine. And I think, it's also an opportunity for us to finally imagine the country that we've been dreaming of. It's also an opportunity for us to make some things better, to rethink our values, and maybe to start better caring about those who have been most negatively impacted by the war. And in the future, now we already need to start thinking about creating opportunities for people who have served at the front line, right? Because they are defending European values in our future with their own lives. And the least we can do is to support their children, their families, and eventually support their future and their prosperity when they come back from the war by winning this war. So I think it's just probably, a recognition of a very hard daily job that the Teach for Ukraine team has been doing. And I think it's also important, to be able to tell the story of what is happening to Ukraine's education, right? That being on the Forbes 30 and 30. It's a very global community that also gives you a huge exposure to many, many different people in the world. So, by being part of the Forbes 30 and 30 community, you're also part of something global, which can help you advance your mission and grow Teach for Ukraine as a bigger, stronger, more impactful organization, so that by the end of the day, we can reach every single child in Ukraine, so that every single child can fulfill their potential, regardless their family circumstances or where they're born.